Hello and welcome to That's Wild, a podcast series brought to you by the National Parks Board. I'm Elliot and I'll be your host for this series where we'll be talking to special guests from the nature community about topics surrounding biodiversity conservation in our city and nature. In this episode, we'll be talking about fungi in Singapore. Now, fungi are all around us, or so they say, and today we have Amy and Serena here to talk to us about these special group of organisms.
Hi, I'm Serena Lee from NParks. I'm a senior manager at the Singapore Herbarium and one of the curators in the herbarium itself. So I deal a lot with incoming fungi vouchers and specimens.
Okay, hi, I'm Amy Choong. I'm a senior lecturer at the Department of Biological Sciences, NUS. I teach fungal biology, that's why I deal with fungi. But plants and fungi are very, very closely related. So I also teach two other courses on plants.
Now, fungi are all around us, but many people tend to overlook it. Maybe we can start with asking, how did you get into this field? How did you get into, looking at fungi in Singapore?
So for myself, it all started when I was a little kid. I read a lot of fairy tale books. Well, fairy tales got fairies, right? At the start of fairies got mushrooms and little small green things and all that. In university, I only had the opportunity to study the green things, the tiny green things, bryophytes, with my then prof, Benito Tan. So it was only natural years later when I went to work and under NParks that, there was an opportunity to do even more like mushrooms. And well, that was my interest. I mean, I could stare at green things for a long time before I learned their names. But mushroom seems magical and it just go in my head.
Right.
The names, yeah.
And when did you get the opportunity to look into mushrooms a bit further? Was it research
it was
or was
only
it?
when I did my master's in Edinburgh, I actually linked up with the prof first to design my own project specifically on mushrooms. And at that time, we have this famous botanist long time ago called EJH Corner. It so happens that in Edinburgh, most of his collections have been lodged there. So it was only natural that I studied the Singapore material over in Edinburgh at that opportune time.
Right,
Yeah.
cool. And so since then, have you seen any fairies or gnomes?
No lah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, how about you, Amy?
For me, I was undergraduate. When back then it was botany department, and then we had this professor from Germany, and he was Ingonus, and he taught us fungi. So in his lecture, there were so many beautiful pictures of mushrooms. So the whole class is like, ooh, ah, ooh. And then it was so memorable. I remember when we all were doing our honors, we were walking past this field near NUS, and there was a puffball. Oh, this is the puffball that Prof. Noos mentioned. So we collected it and then we brought back to the lab. And then we cut it up. Put pepper and soy sauce and we
you
ate
cooked it.
Microwave. And then we shake each other's hand. Nice to know you. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a lot of people's first interaction with mushrooms, right? It's on the dinner plate. So before, I guess, that lecture on mushrooms, did you have an interest already or was it really just because of that?
It was really just because of that. I mean, when I was growing up in Malaysia, the first encounter with mushroom was a mushroom came out of the bathroom door, right? Because wood, and then
Right.
it was humid, and then suddenly you got this mushroom come out. That's how it is.
Thanks for providing those introductions, and I think really interesting to know how you guys both separately got into fungi. But maybe we can start with what are fungi? What characterizes, fungus?
Fungi are not plants, not animals. They are their own kingdom. And then fungi cannot photosynthesize, so they have to take their food source from the external environment. When you see fungi, basically they are feeding off something. Can be wood, can be even plastic, or your shower curtain where there is some coating and moisture. So they really need moisture in order to grow.
Let me start with the bigger aspects of the life where you can actually see them. Maybe Amy will start to talk about the micro ones which you can't see, but maybe a bit more useful than the macro ones. But macro ones is what bring attention to fungi in the first place. So say if you're going out for your walk and you see this strange organism popping out from the ground and it doesn't quite look like the ordinary mushrooms, and then that's where all the picture taking starts coming up. If it's colourful, it's all the merrier. But in tropical Singapore, actually, the majority of the mushrooms are quite brown. There are red ones, blue ones even, but the majority are brown, and you need to actually focus to look at it. But then after you get the hang of things, you will start to see more and more stuff. That's what the Mushroom Spotters, a Facebook group, is very good, because a lot of people who join it go for daily walks and all that, and all the pictures start rolling in and they start to ask, oh, can you identify this? What is this? And you see more people join, which is very good for us.
Right. So you're saying these are macro fungi, like the mushrooms you see, those
Yeah.
are all considered macro fungi. How about micro fungi?
Just now, Serena covered those that you can see, and usually we put them as macro fungi, but there are a lot that we cannot see. There are spores, there are bits and pieces of their body parts hanging around in the air, or on our skin, between nails, on our scalp, dandruff, things like that. Even your aircon, the filter, they are actually everywhere.
Seems like they really are everywhere. Right, so we have micro and macro fungi, but I think maybe to give people a good idea of the range of different fungi that we have in Singapore, we mentioned that most of them are brown, but maybe there are a few more colors that we can see. But in terms of shapes and sizes also.
So yeah, the more colorful ones could be in reds, in blues, in orange. But brown, as I mentioned, is the majority. Shapes, maybe the largest one of all would be her mentioned giant puffballs in Singapore. We have 2 species known in Singapore. They are very related to the giant one in America, but it doesn't grow so big, but also edible. If firm and pure white. Anything else, don't touch. The other thing is size-wise, they can grow as small as your eyes aren't lao hua, and you can see that small, but big, like the puffball, that will be about the biggest. And the one that we found a couple of years ago, the Amanita in Bukit Timah, that one can reach a cap of 28, maybe. 20.
Oh, so like dinner plate size.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's big and it's very robust looking. So it can grow big. Big is not an issue. Small is as small as your eyes can see. Yeah, the range is there.
And like, are these different species available all the time, or like available to be looked at all the time, or do they have seasons?
In Singapore, usually it coincides with the rainy season, but it has to be the kind of rain that drenches the earth and then no rain for maybe 3 to 7 days and then more rain. If you get consistent heavy rains, it will be destroyed. So you also don't see.
Interesting.
Like in the temperates, you get it October range. A lot come up in October. For us, it's year round, just depending on the rain. If rain comes at the appropriate time, you will have mushrooms. If not, just dry, then you get nothing.
It's like plant blindness, right? You have to train yourself to develop the eye to look at fungi. What's the most interesting species of fungi that you guys have found in Singapore?
More like reading about it. The
Okay.
oyster mushroom. Right? We always think that the oyster will have to emerge from a piece of wood or whatever that you'll try to grow it in. But in the wild, oyster mushroom can also kill nematodes to get extra source of nutrient.
Can we also explain a bit more about what nematodes are, for those that are not familiar with?
Nematodes are microscopic worm-like organisms. They are in the soil.
It's a parasite of plants.
Some are, not all.
So would we label some species of fungi as carnivorous?
Some can be
But
said
the majority
as carnivorous.
would be feeding on like decaying matter.
Decaying matter or the human body or anything that they want to feed on, right?
Right.
You can make them eat new things also. For instance, they can break down the oil also, the crude oil. They can break down plastics. They can destroy your clothes. Yeah, if they run out of their natural food, they'll go after anything that they can feed on.
It seems like there's a lot of things that fungi could be useful for. Is there a lot of research that is going into these? I mean, particular uses for fungi, maybe to break down like oil, plastics, especially because plastics are not biodegradable? Or is that something that's a research gap currently?
Elsewhere, got a lot of researchers. I would say, compared to zoologists, fungi is really, really understudied. If you think about food, fungi can be food source. The meat replacement can be fungi. Then there are fungi that mimic or rather look like ham, that kind of thing. Yeah, they are out there.
Right.
Then tempeh is already being eaten. Tempeh is very, very nutritious. So yeah, there are a lot of things that can be done regarding food. In terms of mycoremediation, there's lots of room to research on and actually apply it, because we have a lot of pollutants in the environment. So if you release the fungi and then they can clean up the world, then we will live in a healthier world.
Let's talk a bit more about your research. What kind of aspects about fungi you guys study? Maybe any new or recent discoveries of new species of fungi in Singapore?
My studies mostly pertain to the taxonomy of fungi, so more like the naming and the classification. So that's what we mostly aim to do in Singapore, because so little is known that a lot of things we may see have either been identified overseas or first described overseas, but we may have the species, or it may be something new completely and it's never been recorded to science before.
Because I supervise undergrads, we have projects. We have looked at how fungi interact with insects, how fungi interact with, let's say, dipterocarps. How can we inoculate the seedling so that when the tree grows, they will be healthy? We also have tried to use mycelium to make them into mycelium bricks, see whether they can be heat insulation, sound insulation, or even tried to use mycelium to replace PVC sheets. Yeah, that's a dream.
Right.
My source of students is also from Amy and her colleague Choong. So both of these people provide me project students who are more inclined towards the academic side rather than the practical side. So I give them little groups, they do sequencing, they do morphological identification, and we will try to see what we can make of that.
Right. Any species that you guys have discovered recently that were quite interesting?
If recent, but you mean 2018, yes, there was Spongispora thomasicensis, which is a new genus to the bolete world. It has only one species and it was described from Singapore, but we have since found it in Malaysia as well.
What does this particular mushroom look like? Any interesting characteristics, color, shape, texture?
If you buy the Guide to Macrofungi in Singapore, it is on the cover page. It occurs mostly under the host Copia odorata. It has been found in urban parks as well as the Singapore Botanic Garden where it was described from, but only close association with this tree so far. We haven't found it under any other tree.
Color-wise, is it quite plain or?
Yes, it's rather plain. It's grayish brown. But once you've seen it, you probably can find it elsewhere again.
And I guess the effort to list and identify all the different species of mushrooms culminated in this book, A Guide to Macrofungi in Singapore, that was written by the both of you. So how did the thought or interest in doing a book like this come up?
I was actually torn between doing a checklist and a guidebook. But because if I have a checklist, and checklists usually have no picture, that doesn't serve anybody any good, and nobody knows what is what also. So a guidebook is the first priority for Singapore so that we can give names to what we see on the ground, common things we see on the ground. It started becoming a concern to me when people post pictures and they grab a European name, an American name. That's where the trouble starts, because as more and more of this information gets into our circle in Singapore, then you realize that everything we know here is not real, not that
Right.
name.
Yeah.
So this has to come out.
Fungal bio class, when we go to field trips, right, we see all kinds of fungi. Without a guidebook, it's actually quite difficult to identify them. So at least with the guidebook, it's easier, and they can use the guidebook at least as a first port of call to see, oh, this is a bolete, or this is a amanita. So yeah, that actually increase their interest and appreciation.
And with a lot of checklists, it serves as a snapshot of the community of a certain group of animals or plants or maybe fungi that we see at a certain point in time. Do you see this book as something like that? Are there any fungi that face threats today and we might not see in the near future?
So because of this book, we could actually do the rate data for fungi. So it's the first assessment of rate data for this group actually, when before it was only plants and animals. So that's just the beginning, but we're taking baby steps and we'll get more in sooner or later.
It's time for Nature Nuggets. In the spirit of our podcast title, That's Wild, we wanted to ask our guests to recommend something wild that they've come across or enjoyed and that you can check out yourself too.
The Mushroom Spotter Singapore Facebook, please be on it, because you guys already on it, providing a lot of citizen science information for our work.
If you like to read, you can buy or borrow from library, The Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrick. It's a very readable book. It talks about what is mushroom, what is mold, why are they important. So after you read it, you realize, wow, fungi are really underappreciated and they are very important to us. The next one I would recommend would be The Molds, Mushrooms and Medicines by Nicholas P. Money. He's an eminent professor of mycology. One of the topic that he mentioned was when the mother delivered the baby naturally, the fungi on her skin will go onto the baby and that actually give them lifelong immunity. Their ability to fight against diseases actually are better versus cesarean.
Going back to fungi in Singapore, how are these fungi spotted? How do you guys go about looking for fungi?
Personally, I have a few friends in the mushroom spotters group, and sometimes we go out on field trips and we focus more on fungi aspects. Of course, more people in the group, then you'll be all over. We'll have people looking for animals and plants and everything else. But mushroom, since they're already on the mushroom spotters group, their eyes are really peeled and they spot things more readily than the general public.
Right, and do you guys look in specific spots, where there's a lot of logs or leaf litter?
Actually, no, you just have to be observant. They
Okay.
just come anywhere they're happy to, and depending on the weather, maybe this part got more rain than the other part, and then so you have things that you've never seen before come up.
Maybe we could delve deeper about, fungi that are underground. We see the mushrooms, but there's a whole network of mycelium under the ground. So maybe we could delve a bit more into that. Tell us a bit more about mycelium.
I'll leave Amy to say that, but I just want to talk about the fruiting bodies on top of the mycelium. They are more akin to the apples on the apple tree rather than the apple tree itself. So when we do collection, even if we wipe off all the apples, the apple tree is still there. So it's not like, oh, am I taking and then that's the end of the species. No, it's just the apples on the apple tree, that's all.
Right.
So below ground or inside a substrate, right? Substrate can be anything, can be a branch, a log, even your bread, right? So once the spore germinates, then it will become like a strand of cotton wool. Then they will divide and grow and then become like a cotton wool, right? So they are everywhere in the substrate. It can be below ground, in the soil. They could be associated with the tree roots. Some others which you cannot see would be inside different parts of the plant as well. So if they are below ground, sometimes if you dig, right? So let's say leaf litter, right? You see all the fresh leaf litter on top, but you just brush off the surface and you can already see the mycelial threads, some white spreading thread on the dead leaf. And then if you dig further below ground, then you can sometimes see the white cottony stuff between soil particles. So they are actually very common. And there are many in the soil that we don't even know what they are, because you can't identify a fungus based on the mycelium. You can do genetic work, but you may not be able to ID still.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think this is one of the things that the average person is not aware of. But we have certain preconceptions about mushrooms, right? There are certain things that people think of. For example, red mushrooms with spots are all poisonous. What are some common myths about fungi that need to be debunked?
In Singapore, we're not so concerned about the myths because we don't forage to eat. A lot of the myths that need to be debunked are usually food related. Where some countries, certain mushrooms are picked up because they look like another mushroom, and because it wasn't identified properly, people have died. Either multiple organ failure or many other things that can come from eating wrong mushrooms because of toxicity.
What about health concerns? Like some people, if they have mushrooms growing in their house or mold growing in the house, they're very concerned about the health risk attached.
That is certainly something to look into.
Yep.
I mean, if your aircon filter has mold, please do something about it. Don't breathe the air, it discharges.
Right. Are there any tips that you guys have for distinguishing between a harmful fungi and a harmless fungi?
In terms of microfungi that grows in your house, if your house is over moist, please deal with it, because I've heard from friends their toilet got mold, everything has mold. All these, when the spores come up, it's all around you. And if you breathe and if you're immune compromised,
Right.
you will get some sort of strange thing.
So definitely
Yes.
a group of organisms to respect also.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about how they can be a bit harmful, but why are fungi important to us and what roles do they play in our local ecosystems and in our daily lives?
I think in primary schools, they would have learned that fungi are responsible for decomposition. So we take it for granted, yeah, decomposition, have or not, it's not important. But if you think about the Chernobyl nuclear explosion, where the radiation killed everything, then all the dead things were lying around for decades, right? So then you start to appreciate the importance of decomposition. You don't want
Right.
dead things to remain dead and intact. Then in terms of decomposition, they release back the nutrients within the dead body so that other organisms can use. Other than decomposition, rain formation through their spores. Then there's also all the micro-remediation, clean up the environment. Then providing a food source for organisms, not only human. Then also helping trees to grow better, like the mycorrhizal network, bringing in nutrients that they look for in the ground. They can break through rocks to release the nutrients and then pass it to the plant. They can also bring water to plants. So yeah, very, very important.
Not to mention bread and beer.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
like bread, there's the yeast that is very important. Beer, you can't make beer without yeast.
That's it. Not worth living anymore. No?
It's true. Yeah. Apart from that, both of you have mentioned separately that fungi are found on our bodies. Fungi that live on our bodies, do they perform any very important functions?
Not function, but you should get rid of them if you have any.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, like white spots.
Ringworm,
Yeah.
right? Then draft. But you also need biodiverse fungi community within your gut as well as on your skin. Otherwise, you can get sick quite easily.
Yeah, usually it's like white spots. If your skin is constantly contact with sweat, hence it's also very moist all the time. That's why you get growths of such things. But generally, if you are healthy, it shouldn't be an issue. And, they have topical medication that you can just apply. But other than that, if your body is in a stable state of balance, you shouldn't be contracting all these.
Right. So, I mean, if you can visibly see fungi in your body, then
Get
that's
rid of
something,
There are mushroom
that's something
body
of
growing
concern,
on
right?
it.
But if you can't see it, there's a whole different group of fungi that's working to keep your body functioning. Is the process of identifying fungi any different from other like animals or plants, or is it a bit more complex or harder to do?
That one I would need my plant people to debate with me. But it is a little bit harder and yet a little bit easier in a way because we don't know so much. My first port of call would be to sequence them because otherwise it's trying to step the name in the dark because there's so many out there and so many that has been described since it was properly studied in Singapore. By sequencing, majority, if it already has a name, I can look up the name and see whether it matches straight off. So that's one thing off. And then the rest, we have to do our background checks on. But plant people don't necessarily have to do sequencing unless there's a close between two species that is so hard to differentiate that they don't know whether it's two separate species or one. Maybe they want to do sequencing on it. So that's an extra effort for fungi.
What's the most interesting or the most fascinating thing about fungi that you both want people to know?
There's only one cute one that I want people to know. That if you happen to look from high grounds at perhaps a football field and you see a patch of greener grass than the surrounding grass, it is most likely a mycelial growth underneath. And when certain times come, there might be mushrooms in a ring. So that's really cool because they draw in nutrients from the surrounding and the grass within that circle is a lot more healthier and greener.
The tempeh is almost like mole. It's just that this is the edible type growing, inoculating and surrounding, breaking down the soybean. Tempeh is very nutritious, full of vitamins. Is better than just eating the soybeans. Eating fungi products, first they are zero fat. You get a lot of nutrients and also increase your health, help you with your mental health, as in slow down mental decline. With dementia, in an aging population, is a real worry. So my university, several departments have studied regular consumption of fungi actually help with reduction of cognitive decline. So yeah, eat mushrooms. Mushrooms are healthy. Of course, there are people who are allergic to mushrooms, right? Naturally, it can be anything, any mushroom they are allergic. So please don't eat.
Amy's bit on the 灵芝. All that look like 灵芝 may not be 灵芝. So for those of you who are harvesting from our nature, please don't go and buy from the TCM or something like that.
You know, in the TCM shops, they sell cordyceps, right? I used to always think, oh wow, they really look like bugs. Then after I realized they are bugs, right? Like the cordyceps that they sell in the TCM shop, it is a bug, right? And then there's a fungus.
It's the Choong and the Choong.
Right, yeah.
Yes. My grandmother last time tell me, no lah, it's grass. I said, no leh, it looks like a bug leh. How
Yeah.
can the bug look so much like a grass? But now they sell the vegetarian version in supermarket.
So we're encouraging a lot of people to go out there and observe mushrooms in their natural habitat. Any guidelines as to how we should go about doing that? Things that we shouldn't do, things that we should abide by?
I would say just admire them, take photos, observe, but don't collect because you need a permit, researcher permit in order to collect. Now, if you think that no one is looking, then I collect, go home and eat, well, you run the risk of being poisoned because fungi are very, very good at taking in the poisons and then rendering them not poisonous to themselves, right? They just keep it in a compartment that don't bother them, right? But if we start to cook it and eat it, then the poison will be released. Poison as in things like heavy metals, right? They can concentrate the heavy metals and they are not bothered by it. But if we eat it, then we can be poisoned by the heavy metals. Or worse, if you misidentify a poisonous mushroom to be a non-poisonous one, you bring home, you cook, and you can die from the poison.
And a few are neurotoxins also.
So these are toxins that shut down your whole
whole
nervous
system.
Very dangerous. So don't anyhow go and collect mushrooms.
Yeah, just go supermarket.
Thank you both for talking to us here today. I think I learned so much about fungi and my head's just full of like thoughts about mushrooms now and all the different places that they can live in. Thank you for listening to this episode of That's Wild. Tune in for more episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and YouTube. And if you like our content, don't forget to show your support by hitting the follow button and giving us a 5-star rating. See you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.